Okay, last one is Terence Walley. Hi, John and crew. I saw online that Gwyneth Paltrow is retiring from the MCU after Endgame. How important do you think her contributions were to where the MCU is now? Also, do you think this kind of confirms Tony dies since there is no way to explain Tony being around in future films without Paltrow? Thoughts?
First of all, you can't overstate actually, and this may seem weird, but you cannot overstate the importance Gwyneth Paltrow has had to this series. Because think about this. One of the reasons, not everybody will say this off the top of their head, but for me, I've always been very cognizant of this. One of the reasons the first Iron Man movie, for me, worked so well was because of this, in a genre where romances always suck. They gave us this incredibly charming, sweet, engaging, funny, edgy kind of relationship and dynamic between Tony and Pepper. Iron Man 1, and when we all think of Iron Man 1, we don't instantly think of Pepper, and I understand why, and that's cool, but when you really break it down, it's that dynamic between Tony and Pepper, I think, that brings the heart and the charm to that movie. This is a movie that's got a lot of elements, but the heart and charm, to me, comes from that dynamic and that relationship. And that's one of the big reasons, not the only reason, but one of the big reasons why it works so well. Without Pepper, I don't think that movie works as well. And without Iron Man 1 working so well, we simply don't have the MCU as we have it today. It was that first movie that came out of the races, blew everybody away, loved everything, and set the pace for what would become the MCU. And I think Gwyneth Paltrow's character is a big part of that. And I'll tell you what else, Rob, when I was at the Infinity War premiere, Robert Downey Jr., they brought the whole cast up on the stage, and Robert Downey Jr. was standing there. And he was, one of the big things he talked about, he goes, I want to talk about the first lady of the MCU. And he talked about Gwyneth Paltrow and Pepper Potts. Now think what you will about Gwyneth Paltrow outside of the movies and all that kind of stuff. But Robert Downey Jr. then waxed poetic for a good couple of minutes, just talking about how great she was and how important she was and is to the MCU and where they're at now. She goes, now there's a lot of people being able to take the torch and run with it that started as one torch, and that was Gwyneth. He said, and carried it. Her leaving the MCU is not a surprising thing. Like, we thought for a while she had left the MCU already. Remember that we thought, right, she was already gone from the MCU. That's why in Civil War they said Tony and Pepper were on a break and all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden she popped up in Spider-Man Homecoming. It's like, wait a minute, she's back, and all this kind of stuff. But it's also important to point this out, Rob, that in the interview in which she said she was retiring, she's getting too old for this shit, sort of thing, she did say this, though. She's totally open to coming back and playing cameos. She goes, hey, I love these people. They call me, say, hey, we need you on set for like a day or two to come and shoot something. She says, I'm totally open to doing that. But, as far as going away for 3 months to shoot a Marvel film at this point, I'm kind of past that now. She's got new companies that she's running and all this kind of stuff. I get it. So to me, that sort of suggests that Gwyneth is still alive, that Pepper's still alive at the end of this movie. Anyway, Robert, you hear about she's going to kind of be stepping back, the end of Pepper Potts in the MCU, other than maybe cameos in the future. How do you see her role in the MCU, and how do you respond to, the news that she's stepping back?
Well, I don't know if you guys follow the Spice Girls, but Posh Spice is not returning for their new world tour.
Oh, what?
And I know. What? And I'm like, how can Posh... Ginger Spice was always my favorite, but Posh Spice is not coming back. I mean, what's that noise? Come on, man. And she said the same thing. She said, I've got businesses to run. I can't take 3 months of my life off because I'm, making millions and millions of dollars elsewhere. I get that. But you know what? It's the Spice Girls, man. If you're going to have Tony Stark still alive in the MCU, you got to have a little pepper sprinkled in there. Give that seasoning, give that flavor, because
you got to have a little pepper. There's your next t-shirt. You got to have a little pepper
because, man, I'm a huge Gwyneth Paltrow fan. I'm a huge Shakespeare in Love fan. I've always liked her, despite, that she named her daughter Apple, whatever. She was married to a rock star. I get it. But I love their relationship. And I think it was hella cute when she called him and Tony Stark is sailing off in an alien spacecraft and they last spoke over the, it gives the whole thing. It brings it all back down to brings it all home. But it still makes me think of the fact that Posh Spice is not going to be part of the Spice Girls reunion, which bums me out.
But isn't there also a little bit of an element of like a Hugh Jackman thing? Like when Hugh Jackman finally announced that he was stepping down and going, there was no backlash. It was all like, you know what? He's earned it. He's done
Right.
however many movies. And really, now granted, she hasn't always played a huge role, although her most significant role was probably Iron Man 3. But, she's appeared in like, what, 7 MCU films?
Yeah.
Somewhere along those lines. I mean, she got the MCU started with it. At some point, I think we just got to go, you know what? You were in this franchise a lot longer than most actors are in any franchise. Thanks for bringing us this character. And the interesting thing here is, if they're saying she could come back from cameos, look, her Spider-Man Homecoming appearance, that didn't take 2 weeks to shoot. She probably showed up on set for 1 day.
Right.
And did that. And we could probably see some of that in the future, which brings us to the other part of the question, though, Rob, that is most intriguing to me. If they're saying Pepper's gone, she may come back. Does that kind of put an explanation point on the notion that maybe Tony dies? Like, me, my starting assumption is that Tony doesn't die in this. But if they're saying Pepper's now retiring from this thing, you can't explain Pepper not being around if Tony's still around. Like, does this kind of give more weight to the theory that Tony Stark dies in this one?
I don't know. I mean, it's she can be around and Tony can be around, and you just they talk about their relationship off screen. I mean, I don't think it necessarily means one thing or another. I don't want to speculate about this. I just know that the only reality of my life is that Posh Spice is absolutely has said she's not part of this new Spice.
You know how to keep your priorities straight. I like that. Well, Ash, like, do you think that an absence of Pepper means an absence of Tony? Do you think, as Rob is saying, that it really shouldn't affect it all that much?
I don't think it has to. I mean, I understand that, if she's not around, then they might tie that story together and be like, oh, she's not around anymore because he's not around anymore. But it doesn't need to necessarily be that. I think I'm surprised. I didn't even think that she was in 7 of the films. That was like,
I'd have to go through because you got Iron Man 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Avengers. You've got Spider-Man Homecoming. You've got Infinity War. She makes a brief appearance. Remember, she's in the plane. I believe it was in Age of Ultron. I think she's in that plane getting called. So there's 7.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's at least 7. It's at least 7 that she's at least appeared in to one degree or another. So, and then who knows? Does she appear in Far From Home? We don't even know that Tony appears in Far From Home. So I guess there's nothing to speculate about there.